again, called Starting Up But You Need a Weekly Pick-Me-Up, might suggest getting into anime. Looks like we got a lot of content for the next decade.
Anime's a thing I like. I know Naruto's a Saiyan, I swear. What once was a niche little interest that many would willingly choose to hide in the West has now become much more mainstream. It's now cool to like an anime as long as it's one everyone's seen and praised. Otherwise, you'll at least be present at the party. Yeah, I've been watching some main Abyss recently, and I gotta say, I get the hype. With this rising popularity in the mainstream, the bar quality has been rising faster than ever, alongside the sheer amount of content produced by companies every year. As a result, the way companies approach meeting those expectations have evolved in various ways, but the most basic yet still very important decision to make remains to be whether it is seasonal or long-running. Before I start comparing the two, how about a quick definition? Seasonal anime tend to begin and end within the season of a year, whether it be winter, spring, summer, or fall if it cares enough to get me through college. The amount of episodes a seasonal anime will have during its runtime will depend, but it will almost always run via the Cour System, 12 to 13 episode blocks that fill up the season of an actual year. Some examples would include My Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, Spy Family, Ranking of Kings, Attack on Titan. Couldn't you tell I only tend to watch the popular stuff? Most tend to have one go and never appear again, some come back for another round within a year or four, and for the more recent times, others will split its own seasonal run into 2 cores and double the episode count to show up for 2 seasons, consecutive or not. On the other hand, long-running anime, just keep going! Episode delays can happen, they happen to seasonal animes too, but you can almost always count on a new episode every week or so. They kinda just end when the source material, oftentimes manga, ends. Or when it's not making enough money, whichever comes first. Watching them starts out as a choice, then they become a hobby, then a necessity, and before long,
I skipped out on my SAT for this.
examples include One Piece, Dragon Ball, Naruto, Boruto, Dorito. I've only watched one of these in their entirety, but if you include Law & Order Special Victims Unit, we'll make it 2. Now that you have a general idea, let's compare the advantages and disadvantages that both tactics can come with. Like how convenient a seasonal run is. Don't want to spend a buttload of money on a bunch of episodes and risk losing it all because the anime flopped? Just make a core! Making a 13 episode core or a seasonal anime is the safer option of the two, as it allows the company to play around with it a little bit, test the waters, see how people react to a series. If it gets enough positive reception, they can rest easy knowing that making another core would be beneficial for them. Then they do what they did for the first, or the second, then the third, then the nth. This has advantages. It allows for the production process to plan a good chunk of the episodes in advance, pace out the episodes well enough, and minimize the unhealthy work environments animators have to endure before and after an anime starts broadcasting. However, like everything, there's a catch.
Somebody put some gum on it.
When a core is prepared and the broadcasting slots are confirmed, they can't really air anywhere else other than those spots. In other words, if something disastrous happens and the producer has to delay an episode, there's a chance that the show will have to do something that poor 86 had to do here. A show about the Republic of Sand Mongolia being at war with the Gladian Empire. Those are words I never thought would leave my mouth. The show ran for 2 12-episode cores, the first being in the spring of 2021, while the second ran in the fall. The first core went over pretty well, the episodes came and went, but when the second core came, it seems there were a bit of production woes, and as a result, they had to delay not once, but twice. Would this have been better handled had 86 as a whole been delayed another season? Maybe, but I couldn't really find much on the actual production of the show, so what do I know? Thankfully, they were able to fill in the time slots with a couple of recap fillers. But once the fall ended and the first week of the winter season came around, watchers that weren't in the know and expected the next episode were met with
86 really took a turn for the worst.
other shows already took up the winter 2022 season slots, and from what I could tell, 86 just couldn't fit into the broadcasting schedule. As a result, watchers had to wait nearly 2.5 months until spring came around to just get the last 2 episodes. It didn't really help that December left the series on an interesting note. I'm sure it probably encouraged tons of fans to eagerly wait, but I can't help but wonder if some lost interest or accidentally forgot about it, as the winter season kept highly anticipated anime like Attack on Titan and Demon Slayer to eat up the spotlight. At that point, Dress Up Darling was just overkill, man. Of course, watching the series now with the knowledge of which episodes you can skip over, This kind of thing doesn't really matter now, but for the people who watched it as it was coming out, it must have been pretty disappointing. Thankfully, this kind of thing doesn't happen too often. Shikimori's Not Just a Cutie was another seasonal anime that hit a couple of production woes, but thankfully still managed to wrap itself up by bleeding a little bit into the next anime season. If the producer pouts to the broadcaster in time, episodes won't need to have a season-wide delay. It still seriously stinks when it happens though. Even very recently, Uncle from Another World. Peru's that far? This was hit with so many production issues that it chose to completely restart its broadcasting after releasing 7 episodes in the summer 2022, meaning the second half would need to be pushed into the fall, and then some. As of this video, it's now set to be releasing next to Chainsaw Man, Spy Family's second cour, and My Hero Academia's 6th season, all of which have been highly anticipated. Will it air without a hitch? Maybe, but I'm very unsure if it'll be talked about considering how excited people were for these other series. So what do long-running anime gotta worry about? They can keep going for however long they want, sorta. They don't abide by these filthy seasonal rules. Long-running anime could have a very different approach to producing a show than seasonal would. The method will vary from studio to studio, but while a seasonal anime's production will likely just worry about a specific batch of content and may even work on just 1 or 2 episodes at a time, long-running anime tend to be constantly producing a handful of episodes. The anime can go on for months, years, heck, even decades if it can. The source material is constantly being adapted and we totally won't have any setbacks. While animating for a seasonal anime will just require constantly working, animating for a long-running anime just requires constantly working.
Oh, I promise there's a difference.
There's the natural point of it ending when it doesn't do well. If it starts being made at a loss, then stakeholders can choose whether or not to keep the show running, while seasonal anime usually have a set amount of episodes on lockdown, not really changing unless something drastic happens. When a manga is being adapted into an anime, that manga is often still ongoing. Since 25-ish minute episodes with fair pacing can go through content 2 to 3 times faster than a chapter would, it's easy for a long-running anime to catch up to the source material and pave the way for filler. The best worst thing to ever exist. Filler is often usually just side content, episodes that don't interact with the main story that the source material is trying to tell. Basically, it's an episode meant to make you go,
well, that was pointless.
If you're the type of person who would rather focus on the main story and the series has to do some fillers out of seemingly nowhere, yeah, it can be annoying. There's a variety of reasons filler is made, most notably when the anime starts catching up with the manga. For example, Naruto. A smaller one. When the anime reached the point where, this kid leaves, the adaptation and the source material were about to break social distancing. With a 2-month gap, had things just stayed the way they were, the anime would have likely caught up with it completely within a month. To combat this, Naruto went on a filler craze for nearly 2 years so it could ensure Kishimoto could get as far ahead as possible with the manga, allowing for the story to continue at a reasonable pace. I can't imagine how agonizing that much filler must have been, as practically nothing worth noting actually happens, but they were kind of a necessary evil as it meant the main story itself could get a chance at a solid adaptation. But then Shippuden still ended up with filler because it caught up with the manga anyways, so at least it played damage control. Either way, this is when filler can be warranted. So what about when it can't? Black Clover, the king of shonen, if you will. What an overzealous marketing scheme just to have the show become a laughingstock upon release. The first 6 episodes covered about 4 chapters, which meant less than 1 chapter was being adapted per episode. Compared to the usual rate being 2 to 3 chapters per episode, what, were they scared they would catch up with the manga? How?
Carnation evaporated milk. I better start rationing this out now. It's only about to last me 2 decades.
What didn't help was the fact that this filler wasn't stuff you could just skip either. It was mostly important stuff just being stretched out for very little reason, meaning the pace was inappropriately slow and to some, boring at the start. Thankfully, the show did manage to pick itself back up later on by increasing the pace to something a lot more enjoyable, and from what I can tell, it went from a laughingstock to a genuinely solid series shonen fans can enjoy. Dragon Ball Z and One Piece also suffered from drawing up manga content, whether it be due to coming toe-to-toe with the manga or production pitfalls that can't be resolved without stakeholders coming into agreement. As a result, I've seen many fans recommend alternatives to experiencing the series. Dragon Ball Z Kai was a recut of Dragon Ball Z, taking out all the filler. Considering the fact that it shaved off more than 100 episodes worth of content, yeah, I think it's safe to say that this is the definitive way to experience Dragon Ball Z. One Piece doesn't seem to have gotten that kind of treatment. Understandably so, I guess the series is still ongoing, but I did find fan-made cuts of it. One Piece as an example, I have never watched either, but from what I've heard, One Piece is pretty solid. Is it legal? I don't know, but I have yet to see anime fans be stopped by the question, is it legal? And then you have Boruto.
I liked his dad better.
Boruto is very interesting. So, from what I hear, it basically has tons of episodes that are not present in the manga at all, and functioning as filler in every sense of the definition to let it get ahead. But they are still meant to be considered canon to the series, since world and character building are happening, and as a result, is meant to be considered something that is important to the overall narrative. It still has some of that filler junk that the young Naruto had, but for a fair chunk of Boruto's filler, the characters in the manga that aren't as present or receive as much development are getting it in the anime, and as a result, watching the anime and reading the manga are two very different experiences. Boruto isn't the first anime by any means to do this. I distinctly remember Naruto Shippuden doing some anime-only canon fillers that expanded upon stuff the manga didn't as well. But Boruto seems to be very willing to do these kinds of fillers, and whether that has made it better or worse, I have no clue.
I suppose it's at least understandable. The manga is only coming out once a month instead of the usual once a week for Boruto, so if you're going to be doing just manga content, I'm sure the show would have caught up very quickly. And honestly, if you're not able to delay an episode or just take a break in order to let the manga get ahead, I suppose this is one of the better ways to let the show keep going. I'm still not interested. But then we have one of the coolest ways to do filler. Just don't do it.
Fullmetal Alchemist was a series that caught up to the source material during the anime's initial run and was in a position where it had the chance to start doing some fillers. However, Studio Bones looked at the situation and said, no, we've got this, and did something risky. It went off script. It started developing the story in a different direction than the source material and went on to create an ending for itself that, from what I heard, was received well enough. Straying away from being a faithful adaptation of the manga is a pretty bold move, since some viewers prefer it to be one-to-one, but with the anime getting remade in the form of Brotherhood a couple years later, I think it gets a pass. Now that I've talked about the common ways a long-running anime have encountered controversies, I'd like you to notice one thing. That unless you're a Fullmetal Alchemist, you've started to play the breadsticks before.
Filler can have its upsides, such as paving the way for better paced arcs, and in the end, when a series is finished, you can just skip over it. But for the people watching it in real time, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some divide in the fan base over the direction an anime went. What's worse is that it's just a lose-lose situation all around when the anime catches up with the manga. I'm sure all the people working on it want it to be better and would make it better if they were able to. But unless every stakeholder in a show is willing to let episodes come out with a little more quality instead of quantity, so much can go wrong so very quickly. Well, at least there's one other option. Give up!
Seasonal anime don't gotta worry about any of that, sorta. It's no surprise that they have gotten more common, while long-running anime have practically just been dwindled down to just a couple of shows. When you simply cover a fair portion over the span of 13 to 26 weeks and then dip for a year, the manga is more than capable of getting ahead, assuming the author is healthy enough to keep doing a chapter every week. That isn't to say that seasonal anime is immune, however. The first episode of each season of My Hero Academia spends time just reminding the viewers of who everyone is, and has spent a couple of episodes promoting their movies, but like 95% of the episodes are essential to the main plot, and for someone like me, I like it. But after watching season 5, I'm unsure if it likes me back. Meanwhile, we've got animes like Attack on Titan, Jujutsu Kaisen, and Demon Slayer scoring with practically no filler whatsoever, and I love it! They clearly love me back! With it being the safer way to produce anime from a business standpoint, less worries about whether or not a series will catch up with the manga, a work environment that, while still not great, is a step up from what long-running animes likely demanded, the seasonal animes are the much stronger option for producing a faithful adaptation. What? The Promised Neverland skips a season's worth of manga content in 3 minutes for its last episode. I just think it's funny. Don't I look amused? All that being said, I would not be doing long-running anime justice if I didn't at least point out its one defining advantage: staying power. If experiencing anime during one season is like having a fun couple of months, there's just something about experiencing over multiple seasons, years, decades even, where it commits to ending when the story does, that just can't be accomplished without it. It may not be perfect, but it is pretty freaking memorable. Naruto, One Piece, Bleach, Dragon Ball, anyone that at least knows a little bit of anime knows what most of, if not all these shows are, and would likely be able to recognize them practically on the spot. It's not impossible for seasonal anime to get that kind of staying power. Evangelion comes to mind. There's likely many anime from the 90s that had a level finality when it ended carry a certain kind of staying power that just lets it continue to be recognized today. But long-running anime have that effect multiplied tenfold. Lots of seasonal anime are being produced now, and as great as that is, it can be kind of easy to forget certain shows once that season is wrapped up. Even if it comes back a year later, the level of hype generated from back then is likely to have dwindled a bit, and while it may come back, potentially even stronger than before, it's never guaranteed. I apologize for coming back to My Hero Academia, but it's kind of the only one I've experienced this personally with. I was hyped as heck for Season 5 when Season 4 initially ended, so much so I actually went outside.
So that's what grass looks like.
However, once it started, I stayed outside. I wanted to watch it, I did, but between the arc it was going through feeling pretty slow and the previous season, while great, left me with a little less hype than Seasons 1 through 3 did. I completely forgot that it started airing until a few episodes passed by and I had to catch up a bit. Meanwhile, everyone that experienced Bleach in real time, despite the faults that show may have had to endure, is still heavily remembered as one of the big three a decade after it was cancelled because of how much hype it generated by managing to continue the show for so long.
It's clear that both types of anime are susceptible to production woes, with seasonal anime basically just minimizing the damage. But there are reasons to want to go long running or seasonal. The former basically allows you to generate hype slowly and create staying power that'll definitely last you through the decade or two, while seasonal are more so about concentrating that hype into a span of 3 months a year and just trying to keep the train going. But with all the production woes that both of them are able to endure, I think it's safe to say at the very least that making an anime in general is a very severe undertaking. As for whether that is due to the anime production cycle being harsh on employees, the anime industry as a whole having some glaring issues, or just something else entirely, that is a whole nother topic that I am not qualified to speak on right now. I mean, my knowledge on the anime industry is double what I had when I started speaking today, and I still feel like I'm starting to scratch the surface, mainly due to how limited my intake is. Well, hopefully that can start changing today. From this point forward, I'm going to be watching nothing but anime.
Gotta hand it to them, they don't get filler.